I could do the wall over a longer period of time. I didn't need to do this, but I'd rather do it much faster. And I don't have to do it for the election. I've already done a lot of wall for the election, 2020. And the only reason we're up here talking about this is because of the election.
President Trump making his emergency declaration to build a border wall earlier this morning. Let's bring in White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Great to have you on the Daily Briefing on this great day on a Friday, where it's nice there in Washington, D.C., and the president was able to be in the Rose Garden today, took a lot of questions from the press. Critics of his seizing on this line that I didn't need to do this in regards to the national emergency, and some saying that that will be the opening line of every legal complaint that goes forward. How will you deal with that as press secretary?
Look, I think the biggest thing is that he shouldn't have to do this. Congress should have stepped up and done their jobs and done everything necessary to fully and safely secure the border. The president could have waited and he could have drugged this out. The bill allows for 55 new miles of wall, which is a great step forward, and it is certainly a down payment on the wall, but it doesn't finish the job. And the president is somebody who wants to complete the job, he wants to finish the job, and he wants to stop illegal immigrants and drugs and trafficking from coming across the border, and he knows that you have to have a wall in order to do that. He doesn't want to drag this out over the course of the next several years. He wants to get the funding now so we can stop this national security and humanitarian crisis at the border and take care of it.
I was remembering, of course, people have played the clip that President Trump was quite critical of President Obama years ago, but I wondered if he's found, now that he's in the Oval Office, he's realized that working with Congress is kind of a pain in the rear, and they might have something in common now.
I'm sure that they can probably find a little bit of common ground in the fact that Congress can certainly be difficult to work with. But the difference between President Trump and President Obama is apples and oranges. What President Obama did in 2014 was he completely ignored the Constitution. He violated federal law by opening up the borders, by having mass amnesty, and even providing benefits to illegal immigrants. What the president is doing is actually fulfilling his constitutional duty, fulfilling the oath that he took as president of the United States to protect the people of this country, to secure our country. And there's a very big difference between what the two actions these individuals have done. They're actually opposite when you compare them, and so it's just totally different circumstances.
What about the concern from some that say that this could set a terrible precedent in the future? And I thought of former Senator Harry Reid, who basically used the nuclear option on confirmations, and that has led to President Trump being able to confirm two very conservative Supreme Court nominees, and there's a legacy issue there. Any concern on that point?
I think the president is going to have an incredible legacy. He's had an amazing 2 years already, historic first 2 years in office, and I think his next 6 years are going to be equally impactful. And I think that the two Supreme Court justices are something that are going to be one of the biggest and best parts of the president's legacy, and certainly one of the most lasting, and something he should never apologize for is pushing forward. The sad part is that he had to do that. He shouldn't have to do that in order to put people. He is the duly elected president of the United States. 63 million Americans came out and supported him and said, I want this person, this man, to choose who the next Supreme Court justice is, who the federal judges are. I want this person to be able to make decisions and impact the day-to-day life of these people.
I totally get it. My point only was that Harry Reid had made a decision that now has come back to bite the Democrats, and they have to deal with that. I also wanted to ask you about this because I thought it was very interesting the way the president answered a question about conservatives having, I think, perhaps over-exaggerated influence on the president. And this just in from Ann Coulter. This is a tweet from her just now, about an hour ago. She says, this is not Paul Ryan's fault. It's not Mitch McConnell's fault. Trump ran against the GOP and won. Responsibility is 100% his. Do you think the media over-exaggerates the influence that somebody like Ann Coulter has on the White House?
I don't think Ann Coulter has any influence over this White House or influence over much of anything, to be honest. I don't think she did before the president became the president, and I don't think she does now. I just don't see her as being an influential voice in this country, and certainly not one in this building.
Does the president have a plan to deal with the difficulties that eminent domain could put in front of him as this national emergency goes forward, tries to build the wall? There's a lot of private citizens there, a lot of private property. Does he have a plan for that?
Certainly he's going to continue working with the Department of Justice, Department of Defense, as well as White House counsel, who will be handling those issues. We feel very comfortable about where we are. And again, we know that the president certainly has the constitutional authority to make this type of declaration, and we feel very good about where we are in the process.
Take a listen to what the president said. Of course, you were there, but I just want to play it for the viewers about drugs and the death penalty.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
Our criminalist, a drug dealer, gets a thing called, how about a fine? And when I asked President Xi, I said, you have a drug problem? No, no, no. I said, you have 1.4 billion people. What do you mean you have no drug problem? No, we don't have a drug problem. I said, why? Death penalty.
Okay, so the president just did a pretty amazing thing with the First Step Act, and that was helping a lot of people in our country be able to resolve their problems with the justice system because of drug penalties that they had to pay. Is the president actually going to put forward anything that would change our laws on this issue?
Legislation or executive action the president would take on that front. I think the point he's making is that we have to be tough. We can't allow people who bring in mass quantities of things like fentanyl who can wipe out an entire community. They picked up at the border just within the last few weeks enough fentanyl that would kill 50 million Americans. I mean, that is an unbelievable just travesty. And the fact that those people are allowed to go free in some cases or not be able to be detained for long stretches of time.
This to say, take a listen.
The promise was that Mexico was going to pay for it. So it was declaring, the President of the United States declaring a national emergency to honor an applause line in a rally. Not only is he disrespecting the Congress, the legislative branch, and the Constitution of the United States, he is dishonoring the office in which he serves.
Joining me now with reaction to Speaker Pelosi's comments and the continuing border wall fight, Turning Point USA founder and president Charlie Kirk. Charlie, great to see you.
Great to see you, Katie.
So Nancy Pelosi is now arguing that the president is dishonoring his office by declaring this national emergency. What is your response to that?
Well, he's doing the exact opposite. He's fixing a bipartisan failure of the last 40 years where both parties refuse to actually secure the southern border. This is well within his constitutional authority to be able to declare a national emergency where there's an extended need. And look, the way I view it is no different than any other national emergency declarations that presidents have done in the past, where there is a pressing need that is affecting the citizens of our country, and he has it within his authority to be able to solve that problem. And the porous southern border, this is something you and I have talked about so much, Katie, is having real impact on Americans, whether it be the amount of fentanyl that is coming across the southern border, or guns, or drugs. And what's most concerning also is the amount of children that are trafficked across the southern border. We don't talk enough about that.
Right.
And this is his constitutional ability and authority to secure the southern border. And look, he's also, I'll totally challenge what Speaker Pelosi said. He is the promise keeper in chief. This is something he promised on the campaign trail. He went to Congress and got some startup funding for it, and now is using the 1970s era emergency declaration authority to be able to secure the southern border once and for all.
Charlie, maybe you could help me wrestle with this question, but Democrats and Republicans were for a wall/a fence in 2006 with the 2006 Fence Act. Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin, even Barack Obama were on the Senate floor complaining it actually wasn't enough fencing to secure the southern border. Barack Obama deployed National Guard troops. President Trump is sending 1,000 more troops next week. What has changed now that the president is taking this situation a step further and taking it a little more seriously, and yet here we are with all of this opposition?
Such an insightful question. Two things that I'm able to pinpoint on this. The first of which, President Trump stole the base of the Democrat Party away from them, which is working class voters in the Midwest. So the Democrats have a serious political issue, and the only way they're going to try to make up for it is to try to continue the illegal immigration problem, which they turn and they demagogue into a political issue, and they misrepresent it totally and make Republicans seem as if they're anti-immigration. And the second thing is just this hatred for Donald Trump. They simply oppose things things just because the president is for them. And in short, they truly hate President Trump more than they want what's best for America. And it seems as if no matter what he poses, no matter what he puts forth, they're immediately and instantaneously and automatically in opposition of it. So those are the two main things.
Right.
And a real applause for President Trump be able to really change the political makeup of this country and win states that Republicans hadn't won in 20 or 30 years. That's what I attribute the change in the illegal immigration debate towards in these recent couple of years.
Charlie, I want to switch gears a little bit here. You talked about hatred. You're in charge of Turning Point USA. You have a bunch of chapters all across the country. There was an incident at UC Berkeley. I want to play the video and then get your response.
Oh,
All right, so that was one of your recruiters, correct, who was allegedly punched in the face by someone who disagrees with him. Can you tell us what happened leading up to that moment? Was there something that prompted this? Was there a confrontation prior to this video that was shot? What was going on here?
Yeah, so we were just made aware of this a couple of days ago, where we were doing an activism recruiting event at the University of California, Berkeley, with our Turning Point USA chapter, just peacefully trying to recruit students. And we understand we're going to be in the ideological minority at UC Berkeley, but that doesn't mean you can't try and you can't keep on trying to grow your presence. And one of our activists there was met with physical confrontation, actually.